And hello everyone, it is Peter Sam, the Narrow Gauge Engine here. Welcome to my re-ranks of Season 2. This season is one that I have very different opinions than a year ago. I actually think it's a bit worse than what I originally thought it was, which is kind of shocking, but as we get into the bad ones we're about to see, you'll see this season is nowhere near perfect, and I don't think this season has reached its peak at all yet. So let's not waste any time and delve in with number 26, Better Late Than Never. So yeah, this was the one Season 2 episode I actually despised when watching this. This is just Thomas being a dickweed again, and Bertie's in on the fun as well. I like the viaduct B-plot fine, and it's the best part of the episode, but after those first 10 seconds, it rapidly goes downhill. It's also tied together in a horrible way, and it's just a hot mess, frankly. If I asked a fan to describe the plot of this episode, I bet you 9 times out of 10 that they couldn't answer. Do you know why that is? It's because nobody can remember what happens, and frankly nobody cares because it doesn't affect anything. There are a lot of trilogies and like two-parters that loosely tie together in series 2, and this is not one of them, and thank fuck it's not, because it's boring as shit. Number 25, Daisy. I mean, what the fuck do you want me to say? Daisy is alright, don't get me wrong, it just worked better in the Railway series. It's a snail's pace episode where nothing really happens, aside from Daisy being just humorously rude, and Toby and Percy being fed up. Great, nothing to talk about aside from that. It's barely even an introductory episode. Also, at the end of the episode, it doesn't even feel like the end, it just cuts off and then we just move on to the next one. I feel so wronged by this that it hurts. Number 24, Duck Takes Charge. In Duck Takes Charge, Duck arrives and is quickly ridiculed by the big engines, to which he bites back. The annoying part of this episode isn't the weird noises Ringo makes, nor the big engine's annoying nature, it's the fact that it's not interesting. Duck is a good character, but we just get that he waddles and he doesn't take shit much. Great. The plot isn't much better either. It's just Duck arriving and paying the big engines out. Which, by the way, didn't Percy do the exact same thing when he arrived? So really this is just weakening Percy's character by turning him from a strong one into a weak one. I'm trying to be generous here, which is why I put it over Daisy, but it just seems the new character episodes are very weak in this season. Number 23, Percy and the Signal. This episode is nothing. Again, nothing really happens except Percy gets what's coming to him for a trick Gordon plays. That's great. I think especially the small 20-second long James segment is especially on point and really capitalises on what he's all about. That's really the highlight of the episode. There's nothing to say really except it's fun, nothing too heavy for a Thomas episode. Moving on. Number 22, Thomas, Percy and the Coal. Thomas, Percy and the Coal marks the start of the Thomas and Percy friendship plotline that spans season 2. I'll explain more about that when we get to the other episodes that have that plotline, but apart from that, this episode is fine. It's got a really extra scene with the Hopper, which is, whilst ridiculous, it's kind of amusing. I think this is a pretty lame way to start season 2, and if any episode were to be adapted from Chris Audrey's More About Thomas the Tank Engine book, it should have been Drip Tank, not this fairly plain vanilla ice cream episode. Number 21, Thomas and Trevor. A lot of new characters have shit first episodes, then they get another episode that improves my opinion of said character a lot. Duck Takes Charge and then the Diseasel story for Duck. Percy and Harold and then the Runaway for Harold. With Trevor though, it's the other way around. He has a sweet rescue story and then a weak helping out story where he just moves planks of wood. It's as if the writers couldn't find a good enough reason to show Trevor is useful and just had him liking children and moving wood. This episode is definitely not the best. Not the worst by any stretch of the imagination, but not the best. It just exists. And a few of you fuckers probably like it. Some of you out there probably do. But not me. Alright, so let's continue. Number 20, Thomas Comes to Breakfast. Thomas Comes to Breakfast feels like a 2-minute short as opposed to a 5-minute episode. Nothing comes to mind except Thomas crashing, and that is bad. It's bad because it makes the rest of the episode redundant, and since the crash doesn't change Thomas's personality or appearance like it does in the Railway series, this episode is practically pointless. What changes here? Nothing. His story, his learning, and his resolve is all atrocious, and all we get in return is a whiny railcar. End my suffering. Number 19, Percy and Harold. Some people may disagree, but Percy and Harold was definitely a failed attempt at doing another Thomas and Bertie race episode. Why? because it does nothing new. All it does is introduce a helicopter that will act as either a plot device or as a complete knobhead for the rest of the classic series. Percy still wins like Thomas did, and it teaches the exact same moral. Why not have Harold win and teach Percy that you can't win at everything in life? A hard to accept, unique moral that changes the whole episode's resolve without uprooting the amazing race segment. Again, pointless but iconic, so I'll give it some leeway, especially because it's still exciting and thrilling to watch. Number 18, The Deputation. Mispronunciations of said word does not make for a good episode. It's a lot of back and forth between Percy going to Edward, then the big engines, then Sir Topham Hatt, then the big engines again. Like, give the little guy a break, jeez. The frosty effect does add a neat touch to the sets too, making it a bit more enjoyable. All this episode does though is confirm Donald and Douglas are staying on the railway, something already predictable. It's an episode I'm very middle of the road on. Number 17, Wrong Road. Wrong Road is an episode that gives another chance for Bill and Ben to shine, two characters I'm actually very fond of. Gordon is funny here, but how many Gordon episodes have we had that are like this, where he gets paid out? Too many. The episode's dialogue heavy, and there's not a lot of moving around or scenes where engines are doing things in comparison to other season 2 episodes. We see about 3 places in this episode, and like with the sad story of Henry, it gets boring because of that. Unfortunate, but it was never my cup of tea in the first place. Number 16, Saved from Scrap. Saved from Scrap is one of a multitude of scrap rescue episodes and the weakest in my opinion. Now, I'm not trying to say that Saved from Scrap is anything as quality as Escape or Rusty to the Rescue, but they do follow the same basic synopsis of engine saves other mode of transport from the scrapyard because they're heroic and caring. But there's no real imminent threat with this one because Edward has a week to save poor Trevor. The guy could have stopped up at the fucking Maldives for a long weekend and still have time to save his pal. Let's talk about his pal Trevor for a moment. His brush with death seems to make him value life more and any type of work, which I can appreciate, but apart from that, he seems very bland. Oh yeah, he likes kids as well, which is a bit fucking creepy. Number 15, Cows. Cows is one of those episodes that doesn't do much, but it does it well. It sticks to its simple plot and does everything faithfully, and I can enjoy that. You can also tell the budget has gone up since season 1, with more props and sets. However, I don't really have much else to say, since there's nothing that really stands out. It's probably the most average episode I'll ever find, and I like it for that reason. Nothing outwardly bad, but unfortunately there's nothing too outstanding. Number 14, Brake Van. Brake Van is a decent episode. We have 2 well done crashes, which I both like, and we have the looming problem of who will Sir Topham Hatt send away from the railway. Obviously we know that neither gets sent off, but it's a problem to be sure. I will say this though, Donald and Douglas definitely have the best introduction episode of most of the characters in season 2, although things tended to be skipped over and rushed when it suited the runtime. Really, it should have been a completely refurbished introduction episode to the Scottish Twins, complete with the lost episode of the season of Mission Coach, but this one suits well. Number 13, Dirty Work. I totally overhyped this episode last time, I admit. However, I'm still at the core belief that Dirty Work is a clear and amazing display of Diesel's deviousness. The story here is great and you really feel bad for Duck when he gets wrongfully shunned by the big engines. However, nothing complements it, which is a huge problem. There's nothing else here beside a strong story, which, don't get me wrong, I do put story first, and I have been doing since, and that's why I'm doing all of this in the first place. I felt that my original rankings didn't take into account story enough. Because when you have episodes like Percy Takes the Plunge and Ghost Train, which have good stories and other notable, amazing things about them, Dirty Work just kind of pales in comparison. Sorry, Dirty Work. I'd put you higher if I could, but you're just not good enough. Number 12, Percy's Predicament. This episode has a decent story, something simple, but where this episode does well is the crash. It's one done pretty well and much better compared to Thomas Comes to Breakfast. Daisy is the one weak thing here, having no relation to the plot really, and yet is disciplined by Sir Topham Hatt for no other reason than being a bitch. Writers, this is why you don't miss out bits from your source material, because then your plot becomes confusing and your workarounds aren't cool. I think another notable thing is that the trucks are great here. They are fun, and their intentions are more about Percy intruding than being bumped, which is something very unique and different to earlier episodes. Just a little detail that I appreciated. Onwards we go. Number 11, The Diseasel. The Diseasel, one of the first comedic episodes to grace the franchise, but certainly not the last. Not only do we get Bill and Ben, but we get the fan favourite Boko, who I myself cannot find for the life of me why people like him. He is nothing, he's no one. But what is there to get excited over? Regardless, the episode is consistently decent right the way through until the scene where our twins meet the Diesel. Then it gets really good. The twins fucking with Boko is great, and I think the wordplay is also pretty good. It's unfortunate though that in the future, the twins get really shafted. Number 10. Woolly Bear. This is an episode that is part of the Thomas Percy trio that make up the last 3 episodes of this season. In this episode, Percy is just tormented. He's covered in treacle, then hay is taken by the wind and is blown onto him, and it sticks. He ends up looking like a bear, and Thomas and Toby mock him for it relentlessly. It's 5 minutes of Percy just being so unfortunate, and it's kind of sad. The gimmick makes it for me though, and I really like it. The story stands strong as well. There's nothing wrong that I can really find, and that is amazing. Number 9, Pop Goes the Diesel. I love this episode straight up. There's not any part of this episode I don't like, and every single scene is great. Duck and Diesel bounce off each other really well as well. Diesel's character overall is brilliantly done. His comeuppance is perfect, and I think the introduction is a bit slow, but that's nothing I'm going to get wound up over, especially with an episode with such well-written new characters and story. I'm moving on because we all know why this episode is good. Number 8, Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree. Another Christmas episode and another banger. Thomas and the Missing Christmas Tree is very good at portraying the collective and community side of Christmas, with engines helping out one another and Donald and Douglas getting a main role. I can understand that you can't include every engine in a single 5-minute story, which works to this episode's disadvantage, but I still think that the scenery and the ending with Thomas and Percy patching up their season-long feud in a couple of lines is beautiful. It gets my congrats on how it tugs at my heartstrings without doing very much. Number 7, Percy Takes the Plunge. Percy Takes the Plunge, despite there being no Percy's Promise before it, is a godsend of an episode. Every scene contributes to the perfectly crafted plot. And also, have you seen that harbour set? It is so beautiful. I mean, yeah, the plot does follow the same beats as Down the Mine, but we all know how I feel about that episode, and if you don't, then go back and watch my season 1 re-rank and you'll see. So I think Percy Takes the Plunge is a perfectly constructed story that brings some needed justice to Henry, no matter how small. It also teaches Percy a lesson, and it keeps its audience interested throughout its short runtime. A definite rewatch. Number 6, Bertie's Chase. This episode is a great one. Whilst there is some level of worry involved with Bertie trying to get passengers onto Edward's train, it's mostly just an episode where you can sit back, relax, and watch some buses drive around for 5 minutes. I do think it takes from the Thomas and Bertie trope slightly, but I think it does Bertie well in the way that he is a dedicated bus who would do anything for the passengers, not even his passengers, Thomas's. It expands on his character quite a bit and makes steps towards him not being a one-dimensional character that's just a plot device. Love it. Number 5, The Runaway. Alright, I understand what you may be thinking. What the shit? The Runaway, of all episodes. Yeah, why? Because it does so many things right. It may be slow starting, but it isn't any less enjoyable because of it, especially with The Runaway itself, which, oh boy. It also gives a better introduction to Harold, showcasing him as heroic, as opposed to just a helicopter. I really can't fault this episode. It's just every episode after this is just way too good. Number 4 is Ghost Train. In my first list, Ghost Train barely made it to the top half of my list. I really disagree with this now because Ghost Train is a funny yet spooky hot mess, and I'm really here for it. When I looked at this the first time, and when I've seen people rate this, I've never seen them address the point that Ghost Train isn't trying to be Duncan Gets Spooked or Haunted Henry. It's a comedic episode with spooky elements, not the other way around, like the aforementioned episodes. For Thomas's first Halloween episode, it did well, although I wish we could have seen more scenes with the ghost engine at the beginning. Overall though, it is pretty strong, and I can appreciate it from the newer lens that I'm perceiving it from now. Number 3, Edward's Exploit. Ignore my top 20 list. This episode is great, amazingly so, but it's not the best of the season by any means. I love all of the same things about it from before, but there's one minuscule problem I have with this episode. The Bill and Ben scenes serve no purpose for the episode. I'm not blaming Britt or the production team for this decision, because it's something Audrey wrote into his writings into that book, and it's something I don't personally think fits into this episode about Edward. It's as if we follow the tourists instead of Edward, and that's not helping the episode, especially when we have so few episodes that focus on Edward in the first place. In a season full of episodes where Edward has to share the light, this one should just be about Edward, so why are Bill and Ben here? Besides that, it is really strong, and I still love it to bits. It's such a shame that it moved down, but the next two episodes are just top tier. Number 2, A Close Shave. A Close Shave is Duck's sort of redeemer episode for the character, if you can call it that. The Runaway is the best part, obviously, and is one of the tensest of the classic series. In the hit era, there's like one every other episode, and it gets really old, but here it's pretty solid. I think the one problem I'll always have is Diseasel is discarded off screen and so nonchalantly that it's sad. I was looking forward to a big sending away scene or something, but instead I get one throwaway line. Diseasel deserved better. Besides that, it's a really good episode and one I love a lot more than I did. Number 1, Old Iron. Old Iron is still the best. It has an entertaining runaway, gives great character development for both James and Edward, two of the greatest characters to grace the show. And we get some great themes. The Runaway theme is a bop. Upon a rewatch, I was confused about how the children caused this whole shebang. How do you make it in there? How did they get into that harbour? Regardless, this episode is the best of season 2, and I don't think that'll be changing anytime soon. It still holds first place like a year ago. I really don't want to spend too much time repeating myself more on this episode, so I'm gonna shut up now and we can get on to the outro. So thank you all so much for watching. That was season 2. Obviously if your opinions are different to mine, be sure to leave them in the comments below, but I want to just give a quick little announcement about some things that are changing, some things that are staying, some things that are ending, some things that are beginning on this channel. First thing, the railroad engines. Not many people watch it, so I guess you won't be too bothered about this, but it is going to end soon. There are about 3 or 4 more episodes left before it comes to a close. Now, this was planned to be a multi-season thing, so if I do plan to do a season 2, it's going to be wildly different to the format you're used to, but I'm just letting you know now that it will end in 3 or 4 episodes time, so be on the lookout for that. And yeah, that's really it for the railroad engines. The thing that will be replacing the railroad engines is what I like to call episodic disasters and episodic masterpieces. These will be looking at the really shit and the really good episodes of each season, the episodic disasters looking at the bad ones, and the episodic masterpieces looking at the good ones, obviously. Now I'm going to try and do it within like the season I talk about on the month, so it's going to be a bit of a struggle because I've already done season 1 and I've just done season 2 for you, so got a lot of catching up to do, but I hope I can catch up enough to be in line with where I'm at with the reranks. And apart from that, that's really it. I do want to continue with the Roblox stuff. I find those really interesting, and the fact that I need no audio from me, I need no narration, no speech, no dialogue, no nothing, because you can sort of tell the story from the music and the facial expressions and all of that, which I find really interesting, to be fair. So I want to continue doing more of those and show those some love, guys. Come on, I think they're pretty good, but then again, that's just me. I don't want to force you to watch anything, but I think you should check it out. I think those are pretty fun to watch, considering there's no narration or anything. So thank you guys all for watching. I've been Peter Sam, you've been you. Stay lovely, people. See you in March for season 3, and see you guys later. Bye.